Hello and welcome to DMs with PM. It is week 2 of this very exciting program we started last week, and it's even more exciting and even more gratifying to introduce this week as there's so much to share with you. We can actually speak to a follow-up, an actual follow-up this week. But before we do all of this, I am your host, Oslin Crosby, and co-hosted by
Norris Francois.
All right. So it is week 2, as we said. There's a lot happening this week. We don't want to get too much into the small talk. We're getting directly into the DMs because there are so many. But before we do anything else this week, we are happy to share with you that follow-up. Last week, Prime Minister did promise to go to Cow Hill in Duquesne, St. Mark, to see that situation there with that caller from last week. So let's share with you that follow-up from last week's first DM with PM.
So I am someone calling from the parish of St. Mark's. So basically from the village Duquesne. And in Duquesne, there's this hill known as Cow Hill, right?
Go ahead.
And in Cow Hill, there has been, on top of Cow Hill to be exact, there's been this major issue with this residents trying to get a road. And it's been quite an issue for such a very long time. However, there has been like no start, no progress of anything.
You said the name of the area is Cow Hill?
Yes, so the area is known as Cow Hill.
Okay, so I will make a note of that. I give you the commitment that we will certainly send a team from the Western Roads Division to come have a look at it. And then after that, we'll be able to assess and get back to you as to whether or not it is something that we'll be able to do in this calendar year, or whether we can plan for in the first half of next year.
So they tell me you'll know the issue. So you guide me, I'll take some notes and then we can work.
My name is Mildred David. I live in Duquesne. I live in a village named Cow Hill, which is up here.
Program this time around, we get to introduce you earlier. Thank you again. It's week 2. How are you doing, and how was that visit?
Well, thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure to be a pleasant evening to everyone who's listening and viewing the program. It was a very exhilarating hike up the hill. It literally is quite a hill, and it's quite a hike to get to the residence of Cow Hill, but it was gratifying meeting the caller, meeting her mom, meeting her grandmother, and meeting all of the residents of Cow Hill. They range from 98 years old to, as you can see in the video, very young citizens of Grenada. They gave me a history of Cow Hill, how long they've been living there. In many instances, probably more than 100 years since the village has existed. And as you can see, it never had and doesn't have a road. And so the road officer accompanied us on the trip. We also got some information in terms of land ownership, the possibility of where we can likely look at putting the road. So we are going to have to go back with the persons who have the technical knowledge to guide us as to where and how a road can be built. It probably will be challenging. The slope is quite steep in many instances. It may even involve some land acquisition from private landowners to give the residents. But it's quite clear that it's a hardworking community. It's a decent community. They have to carry all of the materials up the hill to build their homes. They have to go down the hill in pretty dangerous conditions, especially when it's wet and in the rainy season, to get to the main road, to go to school, to go to work. And they're all going to school, they're all going to work, or in some instances they are retired. So it's part and parcel of what we're doing. I never knew Cow Hill existed before. I think now all of Grenada knows that Cow Hill exists, and I want to thank our young caller. I think she's only 18 years old, for being that voice that in a sense has given Cow Hill national attention.
Okay. As we do this, I think it's important that we speak to that of the management of expectations. Program 1 this situation popped up. And you know, by program 2, today we will hear more. And there will be that expectation that by the week to come, you will be there. I want, just as you put in the video, change take time. It's important that we understand that. But I think what's more important is that the program bring out the issues in the communities that we don't know or we would not see on an everyday basis.
Yes, and change takes time. As I said, the village has existed for over 100 years. It has not had a road. So that is obviously incentivizing in terms of wanting to get it done. But it still has to be done properly. It's important for us to explain the process, to explain what is involved, the technical assistance that will be required in terms of just the road construction, the budgeting process, the procurement process, the contracting process, and eventually the road. But I certainly think there's a much greater chance now that change will happen. It doesn't have to be immediately than there ever was in the past. So for all the citizens, we obviously want to continue to have the advocacy, to have the issues raised, and we do our best to respond. Sometimes the response is just a visit. Sometimes the response is actual action by the government or some other agency, or sometimes it's just having the community speak. So it all depends on what is being asked or what is the issue.
Okay. Thank you, Prime Minister. What we will do now, we're going to take a quick break. Norris, when we come back in, we're going to go straight into the DMs. It's important that we don't waste any time because we realize we have a lot, even from last week, that we need to take in. And remember, you can call, but when we come back, we're going to get into our calls and messages for this week.
Hi, I want $10 on Playway, $20 back up on Pick 3, and cash for each, please.
Okay, are you adding multi-X to your bet?
Yes, multi-X, all of them.
Smart! Best value bet. Backup and multi-X, you cannot go wrong.
Don't matter the bet, multi-X all of the daily games.
With multi-X added, your winnings can be multiplied 3 times, 5 times, even 7 times. So make it a rule. Add multi-X to all your Playway, daily pick 3, and daily cash for bets every day and for every drop, and watch your money grow. Available at stores and online.
You heard it here. Multiply your winnings daily. Must be 18 or older to play. NLA, making your dreams come true.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, you missed that follow-up from last week with that caller from Cow Hill. Prime Minister visited the area last week, and of course now the intention is to sit down and work out the plans as to what will happen. Remember, everything takes time, but I think what's most important is that the issue has been brought to light. Callers, we encourage you to call 423-3104, but I want you to be concise. Please let your questions be very direct, short, so that the Prime Minister can be able to respond as much questions as possible today. So let's keep them short. Think about them before we call. Get to them as quickly as we can so that you can get that answer which you desire. Norris?
Well, welcome to all our viewers to DM with PM. And I'm your host, Norris Francois, again. And we got our first DM inside. And Miss Michelle James, all right? Are there plans, Prime Minister? Are there plans to decrease the personal income tax percentage, especially for people who work on commission?
At this point, no. There are no such plans. The tax base is always something that the Ministry of Finance and the Minister of Finance, and by extension the government, is always keeping an eye on. But at this point in time, no, there are no plans to decrease the tax base, the income tax base, for persons who work on commissions.
Okay.
All right. So, Prime Minister, let's go on to the next DM. I have this one from Princia Isabel. How do you see Grenada ranking in the next 5 years with regards to its Human Development Index?
We expect the Human Development Index to certainly improve. And I say this for a number of reasons. One, we are investing heavily in education. And you can look at all of the things we've done in terms of moving the education age to 18 to ensure that persons have access to education. And it's not just secondary school education, that includes vocational, technical education. Two, the Minister of Education and his team are working significantly on revamping the curricula and to create centers of excellence. These centers of excellence that are intended, one would be a marine school. We have no marine education currently in Grenada, so we are exploring the possibilities of whether part of this is in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, given the history of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, or two, whether it's on land here in Grenada. We will significantly invest in what is currently the T. Marshall Community College Agriculture School in Maribor. We intend to expand the furniture, and I'm going to use the word school currently, in St. Patrick to significantly invest and upgrade in those. We intend to establish a hospitality school because, as you're aware, tourism, hospitality is a major part of our education, and we do not have, except from TAMCC and ULO, any dedicated school to hospitality. So this is something that we're keen on. The Minister of Education and his team will also be focusing significantly on improving our approach to teaching math and to improving our math scores. And this is a vital and critical part of this. And there are other aspects that we have already introduced, including, for example, teaching Grenadian history in our schools, because it's critical for our citizens to understand our history, understand where we're coming from. In relation to healthcare, we, as you know, plan to construct a new teaching hospital that is also climate smart. We have already begun to address some of the challenges we face in the healthcare sector, including at the hospital, by ensuring that the management systems in the hospital are improved. And there are a lot of simple things we have to do at the hospital to simply improve patient experience, to improve patient customer care, and to reduce some of the challenges we face in the healthcare sector. But there will have to be significant investment in personnel and HR in the healthcare sector. I've picked those two because I think they are the perhaps most critical aspects of improving Grenada's human capital index. But certainly education is critical to this. And the more we invest in education, the more we invest in our people, and the more our human capital stock will rise.
All right. Before we take the next question, I want to invite the public. Remember, you can call on 423-3104. You can also send your questions on the various platforms where we are streaming. On the YouTube channel, you can send your questions there. We will definitely try to accommodate them. And remember, you would also be hearing us and seeing us on several platforms. We FM, Power FM, Star FM. So if you are hearing us, what you're listening to is DMs with PM. Norris?
Yes, so we have another DM, Oslin, from Ms. Wilson. Prime Minister, are there any plans to bring tourism to the community level by reviving some of our historic sites within communities across Grenada?
And the simple answer to this is yes. And I will start with the parish of St. David. In Lassages, there is a site known as the Lassages Natural Works, which is a historic site. We are currently reviewing architectural drawings to address the renovation and revitalization of this site. The most obvious site sits in the heart of St. George's, and that's our fort, which is currently being renovated. And this is just two examples, but if you go through St. Mark, St. Patrick, St. Andrew, there are historical sites throughout the length and breadth of Grenada that we need to have significant investment in. It will be expensive, but it is important not just for tourism, again from the perspective of understanding our history, making sure that we can preserve it for future generations of Grenadians and for tourists, and so that we can also use the sites as the infrastructure to build community tourism around that. So the answer is yes. And I would also point out that the Ministry of Tourism and the Grenada Tourism Authority since 2023 have started grants for tourism-based community projects. In 2023-24, those grants were $75,000, and they were given to persons who pitched community-based tourism projects within the communities, from having persons experience the various flavors of our teas, to trails, to hiking, etc. So there are smaller grants that are also focused on ensuring that persons can have a successful community-based tourism experience.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I also want to know that the questions that we are sharing now, the DMs, are from last week. So it's important that you know that all your questions, you send the questions, we will accommodate them. There are no disappearing message tab on. We are sharing all of them. I think we do have a call. Do we? Good evening, caller. Thank you so much for calling. Caller, good evening. So we seem to be having a bit. Good evening, caller.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
To you. Good afternoon to the gentleman, and good afternoon to Prime Minister. My question this afternoon is pertaining to the health sector. I would like to ask the Prime Minister what's the future plans for the health sector, as there's a shortage of I should say, employees and the improvement for the health schools? That's my question.
All right, thank you, and that's an excellent question. Yes, there is a shortage of healthcare professionals, and there's no question about that. So the approach is, in a sense, multifaceted. First, from a short-term basis, the importation of healthcare workers is one of the strategies that past governments and even this current government continues. So, for example, you have support for from Cuban nurses and doctors under the Cuban Brigade. The Minister of Foreign Affairs have indicated also that we are pursuing sourcing nurses from Nigeria as well as a short-term measure. In the medium to long-term measure, we as a government are seriously considering reinvesting in and reopening a nursing school. At this point in time, we are exploring the possibilities of doing so with St. George's University, given they already have a nursing program. We're also looking at whether this is something we do on our own. The decision has not yet been made on this, but we recognize that it's absolutely critical to significantly ramp up the number of nurses that are being trained. Okay. In the meantime, the government is providing significant scholarships for some of our personnel who wish to study nursing. The government is also providing, in many instances, scholarships for persons to study doctors, not just at the, what I would call, first degree level, but also at the specialist level. But even so, the numbers are simply not enough to meet the demands. So come this September, we expect the Ministry of Education will, in fact, once there's cabinet approval, roll out a new scholarship policy that is dedicated towards addressing the critical areas of the country where we know there is significant shortage of human capital. And healthcare is perhaps going to top the list. And so we recognize that we would have to invest significantly in getting Grenadians to study the various fields in the healthcare profession, especially since we intend to build a new hospital that will significantly need that. The additional aspect of this is the diaspora. We have trained hundreds of doctors, many of whom have gone through St. George's University and were given scholarships and have never come back. We have never repaid that bond, never repaid that debt, and they owe that to the citizens of Grenada. We are working with many of them who are volunteering to come back. There are a number of missions that are taking place. So we're also working on a systematic basis to bring missions in, whether they be from Canada, whether it be from the United States, the United Kingdom, from within the region, and that is also helping to fill the gap. But these are all obviously short-term measures that are not necessarily long-lasting, but the diaspora is one area where we have to focus more on to get to a Grenadian medical professional who've been educated in Grenada at taxpayers' expense to be able to come back in a very strategic and structured manner to help us provide some of the services that we need in the short term. But in the medium to long term, it simply requires us to invest a lot more in training, educating, and encouraging our healthcare professionals to specialize. Now, these are simple answers. The way in which it's done is a lot more complicated and requires a lot more resources and a lot more planning, and it will obviously take time before we get to a point where we have sufficient numbers, because it's a worldwide issue in terms of the shortage of adequate healthcare professionals for healthcare worldwide. It's not just a Grenada or a Caribbean issue.
Okay. Thank you, Prime Minister. We have another caller online. Good evening. Thank you so much for calling.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Please identify yourself and share your question.
I prefer not to identify myself, but I just want to commend the Prime Minister on a magnificent job in terms of prioritizing the development of the human resource of the country. And my question is in relation to the road traffic. I would like to ask the Prime Minister if there's any plans, one, to deal with the indiscriminate parking on the roadways, which is counterproductive to the country, you know, in terms of time and the amount of time that it takes to traverse. And also in terms of the reckless drivers, especially on the truck drivers, is there plans in place to maybe put demerit points for offenders, etc.? That's my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The answer to the first question is yes. The Transport Commission, which also includes a representative from the Office of the Commissioner of Police, is actively working currently on a plan to submit to the Cabinet for review, for consultation, and for discussion. I think we have to accept that as a nation. We are perhaps already way past the point where the indiscriminate parking of vehicles on the road is posing a major traffic and safety risk. And we have to accept that the public road is not private property. And for persons who buy vehicles, they have to appreciate that using the public roads as their car park is simply not something that is permissible. There are roads, for example, Laborie, which was recently renovated. and it's largely become a public car park. You can take the road leading to the Molina area where the road had collapsed. And miraculously, as soon as the road has been repaired and vehicles can traverse, you have a long line of vehicles that are parked on the road. But outside of that, there's still a phenomenal amount of derelict vehicles parked indiscriminately all over the roadways in Grenada, and we simply cannot continue with this. It will make our quality of life significantly less. It will create, as the caller said, a situation where you spend so much time getting from one place to the other that it is going to make us a largely unproductive society, and it will defeat the image of pure Grenada, of clean Grenada, and to some extent it will defeat the idea of island life. So that's one. On the specific issue of the demerit points, I think that's a detail for consideration by the Transport Commission, and subject to my memory, I believe it already exists within the traffic laws of Grenada, and it's a question therefore of whether the magistrates, in exercising their discretion to sentence persons who break the law, certainly when it comes to parking, whether they will be prepared to enforce such a system. But overall, it will require some consultations and some discussions. It's something that affects everybody, and we need to be in a position where we do what is best for the country.
Okay. Prime Minister, is going to be a very busy evening, it seems. We have a call from St. Kitts. Good evening, and thank you so much for calling us.
Good evening, Prime Minister, and to your host and everyone listening. I would just like to switch around the question just a little bit, because I know that is something that I have been saying a lot on social media. Now, I know that definitely it's difficult for us to separate party politics from government, but I think that now, especially the younger voting population, would like to know if, considering the amount of work that you're doing with Project Polaris and every other thing, if you're still considering only running for 2 terms in Grenada, I think, quite honestly, that would be a big blow for us. And I think if you can give the population of Grenada some assurance that you would stick around us and show that most of the projects that you started are going to fruition, Grenada will be in a better place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cole. I'm not sure if it was a question as much as a comment. And I will answer this by saying I'm a Grenadian, I'm not going anywhere. And as I've said repeatedly, you don't always have to serve your country by holding a political office or being in public office. So I certainly give the commitment to the people of Grenada that as long as I'm a Grenadian, and I don't think I'll ever lose that, and as long as I'm alive and capable mentally and physically, I would certainly serve my country.
Okay. Thank you, Prime Minister. Norris?
Yes, so we have another DM from Mr. Mack. What incentives does the government have to put in place for those coming back to build in Grenada, etc., solar panels?
Right, so I think last week someone asked a similar question, and I indicated that there's a concession desk, and the government does provide concessions for returning nationals who wish to build, who wish to buy. Specifically in relation to renewable energy and solar panels, those items, I'm subject to correction here, but I'm pretty sure the Ministry of Finance will indicate that those items are zero rated. So we are in fact encouraging persons to buy solar panels. The PURC and Grenlec, they both have in place an arrangement that allows for persons to have solar panels to connect to Grenlec. There are some issues that need ironing out in terms of the rates and so on, and we know that has been an issue. We expect shortly that Cabinet will give directive as to the type of rates, because we also have to bear in mind that Grenlec maintains the grid. So when you are not powering yourself, you need Grenlec to power you, and so we have to be fair to Grenlec and fair to ourselves to make sure that there's stability. Additionally, electric cars, hybrid cars, these are also from customs duties, etc. These are also concessions, and you don't have to pay duties on the importation of those things. So we are doing everything to encourage renewable energy, because we do have, and we are blessed with abundant sunshine throughout the year. So for the caller, if you're coming back and you intend to build and you intend to use solar panels to power your home or to power your water for heating, those are items which already have and enjoy concessions.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Prime Minister. We have another call on the line. Good evening to you, caller. Thank you so much for calling.
Good afternoon, my dear, and good afternoon, Prime Minister.
Good evening, sir.
my question to you is, it's been 1 year and 1 month it doesn't have a big entertainment show in Grenada. And since we have a former California as a Minister of Culture, why is so many bottlenecks for promoters to have an event in Grenada? And why is it so costly for us and not working with us?
All right, well, you say it's 1 year and 1 month since we've had a big event. I haven't been tracking the big events, but if I'm not mistaken, there was a huge reggae show, subject to correction, put on by Steve Duncan, which I don't think has been a year and a month yet, but I'll stand
April gone make it 1 year.
April gone make it 1 year. All right. So I'm not sure what is the challenge with getting a big show, as you put it, done in Grenada. So maybe you can tell me specifically what the issues are.
Well, I think first of all, when you reach out to Lotto, the slogan saying sports, culture and nation building. And when you reach the Lotto, before the sponsor to reach the Lotto, you get an email saying we don't sponsor this event anymore. When you try to get to the Ministry of Culture, there are a lot of outlets. They can't get to speak to the minister, they can't get to speak to PS. So then, and all you're hearing, before you start to plan an event, you have to pay that bill, this bill, that bill. So then even the promoters start to running away from the event. And I think it's too much bottleneck for us as promoters to get an event going, to entertain our people, sometimes free up their mind.
Right, and you don't think that we have enough local artists here that we could use to allow our people to free up their mind?
Well, even if you try to use the local artists, the amount of bills you have to pay before you get to that bridge is too many. So I actually speak to the chairman of the stadium to hold an event recently, and he said to me, he's checking numbers, so all he's checking on is the money. So he's saying to me, he wants $5 at every head, come to the stadium, and I'm saying to you, let us work together and make it happen.
Well, I certainly agree that the working together is essential. I can certainly speak from the perspective of, well, there are two issues we need to address. One, the cricket stadium has not been available. And so that makes the venue that is available a lot more restricted, which is essentially the track and field and the soccer stadium. And we have a balancing issue to address here. GFA, I was told up to, I think, a week or 2 weeks ago, indicates that if our field is not at the suitable level that allows for the payment of international matches, the GFA is actually fined. And one of the challenges with using the football stadium and the field is that it causes significant damage, and it takes a very long time for the field to get back to international standard. Two, the track was recently relayed, and I think you would probably be aware of the importance of track and field to our young persons, character games, secondary school. Again, having big entertainment type events where the track is compromised is also a significant challenge. So over the last 18 months, there's no doubt that venues have been an issue, and we've had to be careful in terms of managing the events, particularly on the track and the field side of the football and track stadium. I believe the car park and so on has been available. But as a promoter, I think you're also in it to make money. The National Stadium Authority also has to manage its bills, its expenditure. The maintenance of the stadium is also a significant challenge. And as you can see, the cricket stadium is being renovated, thankfully and kindly, with a grant from the government and people of China, so that the stadium itself doesn't make the kind of money that is required to actually maintain both the cricket and the football and track and field stadium. So I think from a venue point of view, I will certainly accept that we do have a challenge in finding an appropriate large entertainment type venue that doesn't in turn do damage to football or damage to track and field. So yes, I agree that more discussions have to happen. I know the Minister of Youth and Sport as well as the Minister of Culture have been discussing this.
I think the Minister of Culture is very hard to find. Even if the send email, you try to reach it via email, you try to go to his office, he's not responding, you're giving his number by a call, he's not answering the phone, he's not calling back, and I wish it's very bad for culture.
All right, well,
from a Calypsonian.
Well, I think, on the assumption that he's listening to the program, I'm sure he's hearing you. You haven't identified who you are, but I will certainly make the effort to let him know the concerns that you have raised. I'm certainly aware, for example, that they've been working on policies to address, for example, and that's why I'm raising the issue here about local entertainment, because, and I'm unapologetic about that. One of the things I've said is that our promoters need to support and promote more for local entertainment, because then the money stays in Grenada. You don't have to pay work permits, you don't have to spend large amounts of money in US dollars that leaves the country, and it gives our local promoters, local artists an opportunity to be paid better, and for you, the promoter, to demand a higher quality and standard from them, and for us to promote our own art and craft. But the challenges within the sector, in terms of venue, in terms of pricing, it is something that I'm prepared to have the minister have a discussion with, insofar as it's a government site or location, and we can see how we can address that. But it'd be useful if, I don't know if there's a promoters association. It would also be useful if perhaps we could have all the promoters rather than just one or two showing up, because you'd appreciate then one promoter may say one thing, another may say another. So if there's a grouping or association of promoters, then it would be good. If there isn't one, I would encourage the formation of one, and then it makes it easier to discuss and raise the issues. So thank you for your concerns.
You're most welcome.
Good night. We have another caller online. Hello. Welcome to DM with PM.
Hi, pleasant good afternoon.
Pleasant good afternoon to you.
All.
Where are you calling us
Special
from?
good afternoon to the team. I'm
Where?
calling from St. George's.
Okay. Sure, go right ahead.
Hi, my question is to the PM. I was just wondering if you guys have ever considered, due to I have been talking about like jobs and jobs and jobs in our country, if you guys ever consider actually opening a factory here in Grenada, choose that we are island and we have a lot of food to disposal. I just want to know if that was anything you guys ever come up with or think about.
The answer is yes, but I think we are of the view that the private sector is best placed to own, operate factories. And I'll give an example. Recently, Mr. Leroy Nichols and his family purchased the Windfresh factory, which is located in Lassages in St. David's. That Windfresh factory was a factory amongst the Windward Islands governments, which was meant to process particularly fruit and pulp it and export it. The venture failed, and the factory lay dormant and idle, and it was closed down for a number of years. The factory has recently been purchased, and the Nichols family is working on reopening it. We don't have the capacity as a government, or governments generally are not very good at running things like factory. Ultimately, it's a business, and so we need persons who are in the private sector who have the capacity to do so. And what we are prepared to do as a government is to support the initiatives to make sure it's successful. You have, for example, Mr. Antwine, who in St. Andrew, who runs Antwine Beauregard factory, where the famous Woodman rum is made. That is also a factory, and it started from very humble beginnings and has been able to grow. Again, we are happy to work with and support those factories. The Minister for Economic Development and Planning, Agricultural Lands, Honorable Lennox Andrews, and his team, they have acquired a small site in Lackalome, St. David, which has a factory cell. The intent is to use that factory as infrastructure to allow small manufacturers who wish to do agro-processing, who otherwise may not have a facility to do so, to be able to have access to that facility so that they can do it. Again, as a government, we want to facilitate, but critically, when it comes to things like factories, it's important for the private sector to be the ones running it, because they would be a lot more efficient. I think they would have the time, the expertise, and the motivation, because you want the factories to be successful, you want them to make profit, you want them to be able to pay the workers well, you want the products to be able to sell and to be successful. So the approach of the government is really to ensure that we support, but the factories, the operation, the ownership, the management should largely be for the private sector.
All right. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. It has been a very... Sorry, you still there, caller?
Yes. Yes, so that's the next question I would like to ask you, just given the time. I'm sorry if I'm inconveniencing anyone.
No, quickly ask your question.
Another question I'd like to ask. I heard you speak concerning on the housing and getting a loan from the bank and things, but there's a lot of people who's not employed and also have a spot. So I was wondering if there's something in place where you can actually pay, like when you rent the house, when they build a house and stuff for you, you actually then pay a monthly something like maybe $200 if you're not employed, you can approve a loan in the bank if there are things in place for people like that also.
So currently, no. What currently obtains in very specific cases, if the criteria is met, is that there is a housing assistance program through the Ministry of Housing that provides assistance, not situations where you build an actual house for someone. And as you've sort of identified, if the person isn't working, even to pay the $200 a month would be a very difficult thing for them. So really and truly, it's critical for us to make sure as much as possible that we can have persons who are employed. And we also have to be, sensible. Oftentimes people, and we understand it, but it's not always something that is encouraged. Sometimes someone says they're moving out of a house simply because they're not getting along with a family member. But if you don't have the means to buy a house or rent an apartment or to pay a loan for a house, then it means, and the issue is merely your relationship with the family member, it means we have to work on how we encourage persons to be able to live together, to mediate their problems rather than making more problems for yourself. Because if you move out of the house and you have no place to go or stay, then you run the risk of virtually becoming homeless with other challenges. So it is obviously a difficult situation. There are emergency cases, for example, where someone's house burns, for example, where the Ministry of Housing and Social and Community Development will provide temporary housing for 3 months, or rent an apartment for 3 months in those sort of emergency cases. But for Housing Authority, for example, also has a soft loan program where you can get up to $40,000 for house maintenance or repairs. It's very difficult to build a home for $40,000. It will be a very small, probably wooden house. And even then, at $40,000, you would obviously have to have a job to be able to pay, even if it's $200 or $150 or $350, as the case may be. So that's why it's important for us to, as much as possible, to encourage employment. And then second, to also encourage the pooling of resources. There's nothing wrong with a family buying a house together. So if the person may not be working and they can't pay the money, they might be able to help with the cleaning, the cooking, whatever else that is required in terms of the household, to make sure that they are making their contribution as well. Sometimes people have seasonal employment. They may work during the tourism season and then not have a job in the latter part of the year. And that's why so we want to encourage households. We want to encourage families, and we want to encourage persons to pull resources together to assist sometimes in getting the homes, because all of us, we start off by living in our parents' home, or at least some other family home, and until you get to the point where you're strong enough or successful enough to be able to go on your own. But if you're not at that point, it wouldn't make sense leaving the house to go into a worse off situation. But I will say finally, we do realize that housing is a major social challenge. We've had 2 hurricanes, Beryl and Ivan, over the last 20 years. The cost of housing has been extremely expensive and challenging. And save for the homes which have been built by the kind generosity of the government and people of China, there has been no real systematic housing program in a sustained way over the last 30 years almost. And the government is therefore looking at reviewing all of the housing initiatives to see how best we can address this. But it will have to be addressed in conjunction with the banks, the insurance companies, the credit unions, and the private sector, because we would have to have development and contractors who can build homes at the quality and hopefully at the price that we can manage. So we're in fact having a housing retreat, if I may call it this, tomorrow, coincidentally, for the entire day. And we're hoping after that retreat and some further deliberations and interactions with all of the stakeholders, we would be in a position come July to be able to announce to the public how we intend to help and assist with developing more housing for Grenada. And I'm going to repeat critically, this has to be done in conjunction with the private sector.
All right. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Thank you, caller and callers, for the first part of the program who have called. The time is quickly running up. It's just an hour, but we have covered a lot this week. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we will be taking in more of your calls and also some of the DMs that you have sent us.
What if you had a choice? A choice of joining a line or a choice of making your purchases online? What would you choose? While you ponder on that, the National Lotteries Authority has provided another purchasing option. All their games are now available online. Yes, Grenadians. From wherever you are, purchase your favorite daily and jackpot type games using any electronic device. Register on the NLA's website at www.nla.gd. Top up your account and enjoy online lottery gaming at your convenience. We're taking shopping comfort up, several notches. But the choice is yours. Join a line or buy online. NLA, make your dreams come true.
It's like the water pure and clean. It's a comfort anytime you need it. It's for everybody, fresh and green. You can count on us, there's nothing like it. It's homegrown. It's island pure. It's homegrown.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us again today for DMs with PM. We had a number of calls for the first part of the program. We have just under 20 minutes to go, but let's see how much we can take it, and we're going to try to take in as much DMs as possible and facilitate your calls when you do call in. Norris?
Yes, so we got PM, we got a DM from Miss Olivia Gordon. All right, do you think Grenada should do away with the British Privy Council as the final court of appeal? If so, in your next term, would you do another referendum on the same?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. My answer is yes. I do think we should do away with the British Privy Council, and I'm hesitating to say that in the next term we will do a referendum. We've had two referenda on this matter, and they failed. I think it will require significant educating of the public first, and it would have to be a process that all of the political parties agree and support. If it becomes marred in partisanship, then I am not so sure that it will be successful. But it is very, very expensive to go to the Privy Council, and as a result, in reality, the Eastern Caribbean Court of Appeal almost acts as our final court of appeal, because I think studies will show that in 150 years, I'm not even sure if 10 matters from Grenada have ever gone to the Privy Council. So that means the percentage of cases that actually ever go is very small. So in effect, it's the Court of Appeal of the Eastern Caribbean that is determining most civil and criminal matters that come out of not just Grenada but the entire Eastern Caribbean. And certainly after 50 years of independence in Grenada's case, I see no superiority in the judgments that emanate from the Privy Council over the judgments that emanate from our Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. And invariably, they're either upholding a decision from a High Court judge here or the Court of Appeal. Because as the final appellate court, to a large extent, the exercise is one of reviewing. So if, for instance, the Court of Appeal reversed the decision of the High Court, to a large extent, the Privy Council is either going to agree with the Court of Appeal or agree with the High Court. So to a large extent, there is no qualitative difference as far as I'm concerned with the jurisprudence that emanates from the Privy Council and that from the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. So there's no point in my view us holding on to the Privy Council.
All right. Thank you, Prime Minister. Another question here from Reva Lewis Fraser. How does your administration plan to encourage and incentivize the repatriation and return of first and second generation diaspora members to Grenada? How do you suggest we become more actively involved at the local level and contribute our expertise, skills, and professional experience to the development of our homeland permanently? My resume is ready, and I'm eager to engage.
All right. Well, certainly, even without the resume, we're ready for you to come back, and we're ready for you to engage first at a community level. I think oftentimes we think engagement must be with the government, when I would want to suggest that engagement first and foremost should be with your community, with the village that you want to come back to. So that's one thing I would say. To answer the first two questions, already there is an incentive package in place for Grenadians to return. So there are concessions that incentivize the return. Second, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Diaspora Desk are actively reviewing our Citizenship Act to ascertain and I suspect recommend that we allow for second generation, I will use that, Grenadians to acquire citizenship. Currently, the way the Constitution and our Citizenship Act works is that if your parents were born in Grenada and you were born outside of Grenada, you are entitled to citizenship.
Okay.
But if your children are born outside of Grenada, they are not. And so I know the Minister for Foreign Affairs has been quite keen to push for a review of the legislation that would allow for that second generation of persons who are born outside of Grenada to Grenadian parents to be able to acquire Grenadian citizenship. So certainly if that change in the law takes place, it certainly will then automatically make you a Grenadian citizen, and obviously it means Grenada is home. In terms of active engagement, we've already started. We have the Grenada Diaspora Advisory Council. We have a number of Grenadians who are sitting on statutory boards, and we have not asked for them to be physically in Grenada. They are serving in many instances remotely and virtually. But more importantly, we are happy to have Grenadians home. We're happy to have people volunteering the time if that's the route they want to go. But we're also happy to employ Grenadians in the diaspora who have the skill sets that we need that we may not have here in Grenada. So depending on what her area of expertise or experiences, It depends on whether it's with the government or whether it's with the private sector. We'd be happy to have the resume, review them, and see how we can put persons to work. I believe, I hope I'm not speaking too early, for example, that we have a Grenadian woman who is returning to join the Ministry of Infrastructure in June to assist us with a comprehensive road review and renovation, maintenance, and upgrade. She has extensive experience in Miami, a place they always seem to be building roads. And we believe that her addition will significantly improve the Ministry of Infrastructure capacity to begin to start addressing some of the challenges that we face in our roads. So that's just an example of a returning Grenadian who's coming in to assist us.
Okay. Okay. So we have another question from Melanie Corbin. Prime Minister Mitchell, the work of the MIT is fascinating, a fascinating model for effective public sector transformation. Are there plans to share Grenada's approach internationally, perhaps through a visit to London or dialogue with professionals abroad who are following your progress?
Yes, actually, it's already happened. When we were in Antigua, for example, at the Small Island Developing States UN conference, I had specific engagements with other small island developing states who were specifically interested in a discussion about our Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation, and the factors that led to us creating the ministry and providing a review and assessment of its success. What have we learned? What have we not learned? What are we doing to constantly improve it? And we are constantly looking at the model. I think a number of international organizations have also visited and spoken to the minister, spoken to the PS and others who work in it. And I mean, ultimately, you know, I think one of the challenges of modern society is that we've inherited, you know, all of our state institutions, many of them built up over hundreds of years of customs, practices, and laws. And it is quite easy to just simply say, this is how it's done, with no regard to assessing whether it is effective or whether it is serving the public. And that's part of the challenge of bureaucracy, technocracy, if I may use that phrase. And we have to make sure that in small islands, that government is cheap, effective, and efficient. Unfortunately, a lot of the systems we've inherited from the UK are not suited to small island developing states. And we have a constitution that has entrenched a lot of these institutions. The Public Service Commission is entrenched. In some islands in the region, you have things like police service commissions. You have a situation where the way in which ministries are structured, they were designed for very small public service. We have public services now that are huge because the government is involved almost in everything in terms of trying to drive economic development and social development in the countries. And a lot of the systems simply crumble and are crumbling under the weight of that. So we have to find innovative and effective institutions that can deliver the services. We created, for example, a lot of statutory bodies as an attempt to address many of the challenges of the public service in the hope that they will be more effective, more efficient, cheaper. In many instances, they are not. And they sometimes just as slow and maybe just as bureaucratic as central government. So we have to be constantly looking at the form and the systems of government and see how we can get the services that the government has to deliver in a cheaper, more effective, more transparent, and more efficient ways. So MIT itself is always going to be undergoing, I think, review and critique because we don't want a situation where it becomes just another ministry that is, in a sense, bogged down with a lot of the other challenges that we face. So 3 years in, I'm sure the minister and his team will be reviewing MIT's own effectiveness and we'll be looking at ways to tweak and improve it. But we certainly have had a lot of interest from other governments, both small and large, as well as from academic circles to examine the MIT model and how effective it has been.
Question, Prime Minister. Who was the brainchild driving the vision for MIT?
It was a collective. First, it was inspired by Minister Williams, his personality, his energy. When I was looking at forming the cabinet, I thought of Minister Williams and the energy he brought, and I wanted to make sure that he was unshackled. and I was a little concerned that, knowing my own experience with the public service from a private sector perspective, that he may find it very frustrating he was placed in a sort of traditional ministry type arrangement. And usually, one way of addressing that is to make a minister with a portfolio, so you sort of call him to do everything anyway. But I think we wanted, in keeping with our view of being transformative, to be a bit more creative and a bit more innovative. So he really was the inspiration for it. And when we met together with advisor Orlando Romain, we sort of looked at how we can best utilize his energy, his creativity, his go-getter style to make sure that we could fashion a ministry or a tool that would allow him to be effective as a minister.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Prime Minister. Let's go to the call. We have a call online. Caller, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, good evening. Good evening to you, sir, Mr. Prime Minister. I would first like to commend you on following up on that call from last week. That was so excellent. And it's really good to see such interest from the head of our government. So before I start, just thanks so much for that.
Thank you very much.
I have two concerns today, sir.
Sure.
First is the Authority of Grenada. I know that it is a statutory body of government, but I would like to know who I can speak to if I am having a serious or rather detrimental issue with the general manager and his particular way of handling a situation. Is there someone else or a body that I can bring my issue to? I would have tried to reach out to the PS of housing to no avail. Also, with the current increase in price of land and house on the market, is there any way the government can try to regularize the cost of land and also rent? Given that the average salary of the citizen is like $2,000 or less, when a one-bedroom apartment is like $1,200 to $1,500 monthly, it can definitely prove to be a burden. So, can the government intervene or make any adjustments or regularizations to these situations?
All right, thank you, caller. I'm not sure if I heard the first part. I sense, because you made reference to the PS in housing, that it's an issue with the...
Yes, the GM in housing. It related to an issue that she's having and wanting to know who she can go to outside, try making contact with the PS, an issue with the GM. So I guess she wants answers as to who next.
Right, and that's in relation to the Housing Authority?
Yes, Housing
Okay,
Authority.
well, no, the Housing Authority has a board of directors and there's a chairman. So if the general manager of the Housing Authority reports to the board of directors of the Housing Authority, and so that's the structure within the Housing Authority. I'm not sure what the issue is with the general manager. She didn't say, so I can't speak to it. But yes, there is a board of directors. It's led by a chairman, and then you have the general manager of the Housing Authority. On the question of the cost of land and the cost of housing and how can the government assist in making that cheaper, there are a number of ways in which the government is already seeking to do so. And I will start with the Chinese affordable homes that were built by the Chinese. It is precisely because we recognize that rents are quite expensive. And as she said, sometimes a single bedroom apartment ranges at $800, $500, $1,000, $1,200. The apartments that are single apartments within the homes that have been built are being sold at around $55,000. On a 15-20-year mortgage via a riser, the mortgage payment is in the region of $250 to $300. You are not going to be able to rent an apartment in Grenada anywhere for $250 or $300 or perhaps even $400 a month. So by putting a significant quantity of housing units on the market that you don't have to rent, but that you own, we are in effect saying that you have an opportunity to buy a single bedroom apartment at perhaps 2 times cheaper than the average cost of a 1-bedroom apartment that you would rent from a private person. In relation to the 2-bedroom apartments, again, similarly, at $75,000 on a 20-year mortgage with interest, the payments for the mortgage are also still significantly cheaper, probably somewhere in the region of around $400 per month. So if you're comparing $800 for rent, now when you rent, remember, you don't own anything. On a 30-day or 60-day or 90-day notice, the landlord could say, I want my apartment. When you are buying an apartment, whether it's a single bedroom or a 2-bedroom, at a $200 or $300 or $400 mortgage, you own that property. The only how you are coming out is if you fail and fail to pay perhaps over a consistent period of time to the financial institution that has given you that mortgage. So by doing so, for example, in St. David, subject to me being fact-checked on this, I believe there are 220 units in Corinth. That's a lot of units that are available. And then you have around 90-something in places like Boucherville and in St. Patrick. So in total, you're talking probably as much as 400 to 500 units that are available at, if I want to equate a mortgage with rent, at mortgage or rent payments that are significantly cheaper than what the market rental rates are for apartments that are oftentimes not in good condition, that oftentimes have limited privacy because you're either upstairs or downstairs somebody's home. So that is one step that the government has taken to make sure that we have housing inventory on the market that is significantly cheaper and in many instances of significantly superior quality than that which obtains in the private sector. That's one. Two, the reason we are doing Project 500 and we wanted to do the pilot first is to determine what is the cheapest but good quality home. What is the price that can be constructed at, so that we can then be able to go to private developers, go to banks, go to credit unions to say, partner with the government. If the government is able to provide land and infrastructure, lend the money to developers, lend the money to our citizens so that they can buy homes that range from anywhere between $150,000 to $200,000 or $250,000, that would allow for us to drive the price of housing and then drive the cost of construction down so that we can make housing more affordable for our citizens. So those are some of the measures that we are taking. And obviously with Project 500, for example, the government is absorbing the cost of the concessions and so on because we are not collecting taxes on the materials that are coming in to assist with that sort of construction. But I will say further to the caller, as I said before, maybe it's just fortuitous or recognition of the importance of housing as a social good, that we are in fact having that retreat to further do a deep dive as to how we can come up with the appropriate policy that could lead to more affordable housing over the next several years at price points that suits the income of our citizens.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We're 2 minutes on the clock to wrapping up, but what we're going to do is let's take that final caller. Caller, good evening. Please make your question very, very direct.
Thank
Caller,
you very
good
much.
evening. You're most welcome.
Good night, Mr. Prime Minister.
Good night.
I'm going to say, may God continue to bless you and keep you.
Memorial Weekend Saturday, May 24th. The people of an island come together. Sweet paradise. It's a kayak affair, but all our friends are invited. Mainlanders, Petey Matnikins, and everyone. I love me homeland more than I love me woman. It's a cultural showcase at the Nazareth Hall in Brooklyn on 456 East 58th Street. Authentic kayak dishes and music from 5 p.m. featuring the very best of Carriacou, Blackman,
and
Mr. Lex,
Me love how the girl them nice, the girl them sweet, the girl them work at all.
Courage,
She give me the fuck when I finish.
Super Flying Flint,
Come to this party.
Big Mitch, and more.
When you see me jamming in the place, it's fun we having.
Plus the Caribbean Instinct Band. Tickets at $25. It's more at the door. For tickets, call Mitch at 347-409-6615. Keith at 347-242-1043. Or Spice Rock at 347-489-1424. Music from the International Lil B, DJ Chris, Gemini, Naughty Vibes, and Spice Rock. Memorial Saturday. An island coming together. Culture, food, music. A kayak affair.
You see me? I's a man and don't study nobody.
NDC St. George Northeast presents Brilliant Colors Night Cruise. Brilliant Colors Night Cruise. Aboard the Rum Runner 2 on Saturday the 24th of May. Music by DJ Danny and Killer Sounds Sound System.
Tell them it's master, master. I quit till the last.
Tickets is only $75. Food inclusive. Boarding time 7 p.m. so you can't be late. Just pure vibes and a solid bar awaits you. For more information, contact 407-3238 or 405-9710. The NDC St. George Northeast Brilliant Colors Night Cruise.